Hello students, welcome to the English class. Move on to Unit 5, Prose, Justice Above Self, written by the author Munshi Premchand. A brief introduction about the author Munshi Premchand. Dhanpat Rai, popularly known by the pseudonym that is pen name Munshi Premchand, where an author writes not by his original name but keeps a pen name for himself, that is called a pseudonym. He was a famous Indian author and poet who ushered into modern Hindi and Urdu literature with his writings. His writings always contained a social message and raised a voice against the social evils prevailing in India. This lesson gives an example for his writings. Either it is rich or poor, each and every individual has to bow his heads in front of justice. That is what he says in this lesson. Justice above self. Let us know about a few new words, meanings of those words which come across in this lesson. That is bond, a strong connection, swallow is tolerate, grudged, gave unwillingly, obvious, clear, allowance, an amount of money given regularly, sympathize, feel sorry for somebody, mum is quiet or silent. Few more words what you come across in this lesson. Nominate is propose or suggest someone's name. Abide by is accept. Conscious is something that tells you whether you are right or wrong. Defense, something said in support. Claim, deemed as right. Seldom, rarely. Revenge, something made to make somebody suffer. Annoyed, slightly angry. Wretched is extremely annoying. Beast, an animal. Ruin, something that causes loss. Proposed is suggested. Realized, became aware of. Dignity is respectful manner. Disability is physical weakness. Before we read the story, let us know about the characters that we come across in the story. Juman Sheikh and Algu Chowdhury, they were great friends, and there was an old aunt of Juman. And we come across Sanju Sahu, a cart driver. You need to refer to page number 91, 92, 93 and 94 for the lesson and read the lesson once you listen to the explanation. The story begins, the first part of the story. Juman Sheikh and Algu Chowdhury were good friends. So strong was their bond of friendship that when either of them went away from the village, the other looked after his family. Both were greatly respected in the village. So the story begins with two friends, an introduction, how their friendship was. The bond of friendship was so strong that when either of them went out of the village, when any one of them went out of the village, the other used to take care of the family, and both of them were greatly respected in the village. Juman had an old aunt who had some property. This she transferred to him on the understanding that she would stay with him and he would look after her. The arrangement worked well for a couple of years, but thereafter the situation changed. Juman and his family were tired of the old relative. Juman became as indifferent to her as his wife, who grudged even the little food that the old lady needed for survival. She swallowed these insults along with her food for a few months, but patience has its limits. Now, Juman had taken care of an old aunt who had some property of her own. There was an understanding between both of them that she would transfer the property to him so that he would look after her. But the arrangement worked for a couple of years, but later the situation changed. The family, Juman's family, was tired of taking care of that old lady or the old relative whom they had in their house, and Juman became as indifferent to her as his wife. Juman's wife always grudged even the little food she gave to that lady for survival. The little food what she gave also she used to keep taunting her or irritating her. And then the lady swallowed all the insults along with the food for a few months. She tolerated everything. But patience has its limits. Everyone's patience will be limited. You cross the patience, let us see what the circumstances happens, goes wrong, where. One day she spoke to Juman. My son, it is now obvious that I am not wanted in your house. Kindly give me a monthly allowance so that I can set up a separate kitchen. Now, when she lost all her patience, she spoke up. She spoke up to Juman, saying that now it's all obvious that you don't want me in your house. The old person is not wanted in your house. So you better help me giving a monthly allowance. Give me a little amount so that I can set up a separate kitchen. That means she would preferably want to cook herself separately. My wife knows best how to run the house. Be patient, said Juman shamelessly. This made his aunt angry and she decided to take her case to the village panchayat. For the old lady's request, Juman gave a very shameless answer, saying that his wife knew best to run the house. So that means he disagreed her to give her the monthly allowance. So the lady was very angry and she decided to take the case to the village panchayat. In a village, the panchayat will be held. There is no court like how we have in towns and cities. It's a village and the head of the panchayat decides all such small disputes which arise in their small village. The lady went about meeting people, explaining her case. Some sympathized with her, others laughed at her. A few others advised her to make it up with her nephew and his wife. At last, she came to Algu Chowdhury and spoke to him. You know, Chachi, Juman is my best friend. How can I go against him? Algu said. But is it right, my son, to keep mum and not say what you consider just and fair? Pleaded the old lady. Come to the panchayat and speak the truth, she said. Algu did not reply, but her words kept ringing in his ears. So the old lady was very disappointed. So whomever she met in the village, she kept on explaining herself. And some were sympathizing her, where others laughed at her condition because she had already transferred a property to Juman and now he is not ready to take care of her. And few others advised her, asking her to make it up with his nephew and his wife. So they told him, make peace with your nephew and wife, start living with them. At last, she comes to that person, that is Algu Chowdhury, and he says that Juman is his friend and he didn't want to go against him. Being his best friend, he asks the aunt, Chachi, how can I go against him? But she says that, yes, it's right, but looking at the injustice, do you think it is fair to keep yourself mum, that is quiet or silent? And pleaded, the lady pleads him, come to the panchayat and speak the truth. Algu did not reply anything, but still her words were just twinkling in his ears. It was ringing in his ears, saying that, asking her request to speak the truth in the panchayat. Now, how was the bond of friendship? Juman and Algu were the bond of friendship was so strong that when either of them went out of the village, one another, they took care of each other's family. Now, being such close friends, Juman's aunt asks Algu to come and speak in the panchayat. Let's see what happens in the panchayat. The panchayat is a part second of the lesson, the story. The panchayat was held under the old banyan tree. Juman stood up and said, the voice of the panch is the voice of God. Let my aunt nominate the head panch. I will abide by her decision. I nominate Algu Chowdhury as the panch. The panch knows better, neither enemy nor friend, stated the old lady. Fine, replied Juman, hiding his joy over this unexpected piece of luck. Chachi, you are aware of my friendship with Juman, said Algu. Yes, but I also know that you will not kill your conscience for the sake of friendship. God lives in the heart of Punch and his voice is the voice of God. And the lady explained her case. Now, the scene of panchayat. Usually the panchayat meetings are held under a banyan tree in villages. Now here, Juman stands up and says that voice of Panch is the voice of God. Any decision taken by the panchayat is like a decision given by God. and they had the discretion to nominate the head punch, and that was given to the aunt itself. So, and whatever decision she takes, I will preferably go by it, says Juman. The old aunt stands up and says that I nominate Algu Chowdhury as the punch. Now, who is this Algu Chowdhury? One of the very close friend of Juman Sheikh. And because the punch knows neither enemy nor friend, when a person has to give justice, it should be impartial. He should neither favor any of them, stated the old lady. So Juman was very happy, hiding his joy because he felt that his friend would be always favorable on his side. And he also, Algu stands up and says, you are aware of our friendship, my friendship with Juman. Still you want me to appoint as the punch? Yes, the lady says yes. I know that also, but still I know there's one more thing, that you will not kill your conscience for the sake of friendship. Yes, when a person has to give justice, he has to hear his voice. It's not being partial to anybody, because God lives in the heart of the punch. And it's his voice is the voice of God, says the old aunt. And she started explaining her case. What have you to say in your defense? Asked Algu to Juman. Juman narrated how his aunt transferred her property and how he promised her to look after her as long as she lived. But of late, there have been quarrels between my wife and aunt. Now my aunt is claiming a monthly allowance from me, which I can't pay. That's all I have to say. He concluded his submission. After consulting others, Algu announced, we are of the opinion that Juman must pay his aunt a monthly allowance, or else the property goes back to her. Now, after listening to the old lady, Algu asks Juman, what you have to say in your defense? Do you have anything to defend yourself? Then Juman starts narrating the whole story, how his aunt had transferred the property on a basis or on a promise that he would look after the aunt till her old age as long as she lived. But of late there were quarrels between Juman's wife and his old aunt, and now the aunt is demanding for a monthly allowance which I am not able to pay. He blankly disagrees to pay that, and he says, this is all I have to say. And after consulting with all the others in the panchayat, the other members of the panchayat, Algu gives his judgment, saying that we on the basis of panchayat have decided that Juman is supposed to pay his aunt a monthly allowance, or else the property what she had given to Juman on a promise that he would take care of her, that property should be given back to the old aunt. Happened after the decision in the panchayat, let us read on. Now the friends were seldom seen together. The bond of friendship was broken. In fact, Juman saw Algu as an enemy and wanted to take revenge. Now the story had totally turned. Those friends who were together always were seldom seen together. Hardly they were seen together, and their bond of friendship was broken. In fact, what had happened is Juman started treating Algu as his enemy and he wanted to take revenge. Moving on to the third part of the story. Days passed, and as ill luck would have it, Algu Chowdhury was in a tight spot. He sold one of his bullocks to Sanju Sahu, a cart driver of the village. The understanding was that Sahu would pay the price of the bullock in a month's time. It so happened that the bullock sold by Algu died within a month. Now, days passed on after this incident, and ill luck would have it. Now, times are not good for everybody all the time. Now, it was bad time for Algu Chowdhury. He was in a tight spot. Financially, he was very tight. So, what he did is he sold one of his bullocks to a cart driver of the village, that is Sanju Sahu. Now, on the understanding that Sahu would pay the price of the bullock in a month's time. It so happened the bullock sold by Algu died within a month. Now there was an understanding between them that the price of the bullock would pay within a month's time. But for its bad, the bullock died, which was sold by Algu. Several months after the death of the bullock, Algu reminded Sahu of the money he had not yet paid. I can't pay you a penny for the wretched beast you sold me. He brought us nothing but ruin, Sahu said angrily. Algu decided to take the case to the panchayat. The panchayat was held under the old banyan tree. Algu stood up and said, "The voice of the punch is the voice of the god. Let Sahu nominate the head punch. I will abide by his decision." Sahu saw his chance and proposed the name of Juman. Algu's heart sank and he turned pale. So after the death of the bullock, after several months, Algu wanted his money back from Sahu. So he reminded him. But Sahu was very stern, saying that he wouldn't even pay a penny for the wretched beast, for the beast which was not at all healthy. Wretched beast means extremely annoying. That beast was good for nothing for me. And it had only brought ruin. It had only spoiled him, but nothing. There was no profit from the bullock what he had bought. Now Algu was very upset. He decided to take the case to the panchayat. As usual, the panchayat was held under the banyan tree, and Algu states that the voice of Panch is the voice of God. Now he gives the privilege to Sahu to nominate the head Panch, and he would abide by his decision. He would agree with his decision. Sahu now saw this chance and he proposed whose name? Juman's name. And Algu's heart sank. Algu was scared now. Why was the scare in him? Because the previous time when Juman's aunt had elected him as an head punch, he had given a justice. Now in keeping in mind of that justice, he thought that Juman would put him into trouble. So the moment Juman became the head punch, he realized his responsibility as a judge and the dignity of his office. Could he, seated in that high place, have his revenge now? Now, Juman had great responsibility of being a head punch. Now, sitting in that position, he realized his dignity of his position. Now, seated in that high place, could he take a revenge is a question now. It's a question in the minds of all the people. Now, what would be the decision? Whether Juman would take revenge on his friend for his previous decision, or would he give a justful decision? He decided not to allow his personal feelings to come in the way of speaking the truth and doing justice. Both Algu and Sahu presented their cases. Then Juman stood up and announced, "It is our opinion that Sahu should pay Algu the price of the bullock. When Sahu bought the bullock, it suffered from no disability or disease. The death of the bullock was unfortunate, but Algu cannot be blamed for it." Now, sitting in that position of the head punch, Juman thought his personal feelings shouldn't come in the way of speaking truth or giving justice. His personal feeling was he wanted to take revenge on Algu, but now he thought sitting in this place it is not justful. Both Algu and Sahu explained about their cases. Then final decision one was announced that it was the opinion of the panchayat that Sahu should pay Algu the price of the bullock. When the bullock was sold to Sahu by Algu Chowdhury, it suffered from no disability. The bullock was healthy. But the death of the bullock was unfortunate. That doesn't mean that he hadn't to pay the money. So Algu shouldn't be blamed for it. Instead, he had to pay the money to Algu Chowdhury. Algu could not contain his feelings. He said loudly, "Victory to the panchayat. This is justice. God lives in the voice of the punch." Now, Algu could not control his feelings. He was so happy and he says loudly that justice is won now. Victory to the panchayat and God lives in the voice of the punch. Soon after, Juman came to Algu, embraced him and said, "Since the last panchayat, I had become your enemy. Today I realized what it meant to be a punch. A punch knows no friend or enemy but only justice. Let no one deviate from the path of justice and truth for friendship or enmity." Algu was also in tears. His tears washed away all the dirt of misunderstanding between them. So soon after that incident or the panchayat held, both friends meet together and embrace each other. They hug each other and said that since the last panchayat I had become your enemy. Who had become the enemy? Juman had become the enemy of Algu Chowdhury. Today I realized what it meant to be a punch. Sitting in that position, Algu now realized that Juman realized that what it meant to be a punch. And he says that A punch knows no friend or enemy. When a person has to give a judgment sitting in that particular position, he shouldn't consider anybody as his friend or an enemy. It's only the one point of view is giving justice. So he also says, let no one deviate from the path of justice and truth for friendship or enmity. Anybody who has to give justice should always think right about that particular point. Now, both were in tears, and their tears showed that all the dirt of misunderstanding was washed away between them. So finally, they both were good friends. The bond of friendship was rebuilt again. And the much more message of this lesson is that everybody has to bow their head in front of justice.